Thank you, candidates. We will now move into the debate format of the debate. We will begin with the first question. We would like to remind the delegates that time begins after the press delegate has finished their question, so please begin your answer right after. The first question will be directed initially towards Mr. Burton, then we'll go Chow, Jaramillo, Polito, Woolhouse. Will the press delegate please read the question?
Rohan Wilson, St. Benedict's Prep Delegation. And my question is, what do you think is the most important issue in New Jersey, and how would you rectify that issue?
My opinion, the biggest problem facing New Jersey at the time is the pension deficit. The deficit increased by 13% in the last year, and the amount reaches nearly $50 billion. Though there are plans in the state budget for a pension payout, it will cover less than 4% of that deficit, and the money included in a person's pension can be critical to simply getting by, and that makes any deficiency in the pensions budget a major issue. With such a large deficit, this problem must be rectified as quickly as possible. And though the budget is already spread thin, more money in the budget must be aimed toward solving the pension crisis.
Next.
I believe that the biggest issue, or at least the deepest issue, facing New Jersey today is our education system. The importance of education cannot be underscored. Our economy, our environment, everything hinges around it. I would propose a way, by creating more education, we can create more jobs, we can create more fossil-friendly alternatives, and we can create a number of other things because we know how to. That is the secret to creating a great state, is by making it composed of people who know what they're doing and know how to do it. Thank you.
Next.
Okay, I agree with Casey on the point that education is the biggest problem that's facing our state today. However, I feel that education should be addressed by putting more emphasis on specializing educational fields at younger ages in life, because there's a lot of emphasis on sort of further education and higher education. However, I think that it should really begin at a younger age so that that basis and foundation can simply be grown throughout time, better equipping our citizens to compete in a more competitive job market.
Next.
To me, the biggest issue in New Jersey is the divide that currently exists in our political system between the two parties. This has been recently exemplified by the Bridgegate and Hoboken scandals that have surrounded the governor's office. Now, I think the reason that this problem exists is because voters are reluctant to vote for someone that's kind of in the middle of political issues. They want to vote for someone that's completely right or completely left. They vote down party lines, and a lot of the time they're not informed when they vote. If we get people in government that are more interested in helping the people and helping the state of New Jersey rather than helping themselves, I think this problem can be solved.
Next.
I believe that the most important issue facing New Jersey is the failing of education systems, in the public education system, in the poorer and city areas in our state. I think that this can be solved by placing more of an importance on teachers both fiscally and socially. And also, I think that we should try and enforce the Common Core equally between all cities and counties in our state. Thank you.
Thank you. Give it up for the delegates for the first question. The second question will be initially directed towards Mr. Chow, then we'll go Jaramillo, Polito, Woolhouse, Burton. Will the second press delegate please read the question?
Sonai Berzej, Hudson Central Delegation. My question is, where do you see this conference being in 5 years?
Thank you for that question. I think that in 5 years, this conference is going to grow. Not only in the number of people, but in the participation of people. You already see with Day of Service that we've grown from 1 day of service to 4 days of service. So I think the trend is definitely going to be more time outside just the weekend, and more time towards being with each other throughout the entire year, throughout our entire lives maybe. We'll find more friends, we'll be more capable of reaching out to each other between delegations, between committees in the next 5 years.
Okay, so I think that in the next 5 years, the conference will definitely expand. There's delegations are growing every single year, and we're also adding new delegations all the time. And so I feel that this conference is really even going to grow from the numbers it is at presently. And I also think that there's going to be like a greater sense of community with the participants, because there's going to be more interactions with a greater range of people and a greater spread of ideas.
Next.
In 5 to 10 years, I think the conference will advance to be more realistic than it currently is. If you look at some of the states that have of the most successful youth and government programs in the country, like California. Their entire system is based on like the realisticness of the program. For instance, they have political parties that kids join and they campaign in, and they integrate that into their conference. And you know, while that specific detail might not make its way into
We messed up there, Mr. Bleeder, your time is still continuing.
Okay, so while that specific detail might not make it into the New Jersey Youth and Government, I think that the whole idea of making conference more realistic, as well as growing it and bringing in new delegates and new ideas, are what we're going to see in the next 5 to 10 years as we advance.
Next.
I agree with everything that the previous delegates have said. I would also like to focus on the fact that there will be probably more technology. We'll have a better integration of technology into our system, and that's actually part of my platform. So hopefully we'll be able to push this conference into the future and be really successful.
Next.
I would rather talk about where I want the conference to be in 5 years than where I think it will be, because I think that if we want the conference to be somewhere, we can do what it takes to get it there. I want the day of service to be entrenched as a recurring part of conference and to have multiple days of service, perhaps even a recurring one throughout the year. I want much more participation, many more delegations, and I want much more participation between delegations and pre-conference. So that's where I see it in 5 years, because that's where I want to see it in 5 years, and we can achieve that.
Please get up for the candidates. We will now move on to the third question. This will be initially directed towards Ms. Jaramillo, then we'll go Polito, Woolhouse, Burton, and Chow. The third press delegate, please ask the question.
Colleen Kelly, North Carolina delegation. My question is, how do you think Governor Christie should address the recent Bridgegate scandal, the aftermath of the recent Bridgegate scandal?
Well, when a controversy such as this is facing any governor, I think that the governor should really sort of come and actually admit to their mistakes. It's the sign of a good leader that they can realize that they have done something wrong. And a government in a similar position, a governor in a similar position should be able to stand up and say, I was mistaken here, this is what I did wrong, and I'm going to do whatever I can to fix it.
Next.
Like I discussed before, I think that the scandals that have recently surrounded the governor's office are kind of indicative of the divide that we currently have in our politics, right? If our own governor is willing to hold back funding or send a relief funding from a town just because they won't put through a real estate project that he supports, I think it really shows that some of our politicians are more out for themselves instead of being out for protecting the interests of the people and of the state of New Jersey. So I think, you know, like I discussed before, if we want to solve these issues and prevent scandals like that from happening again in the future, we need to seriously consider who we're electing, where their interests lie, and make sure that when we elect politicians, they have the interests of ourselves and people at heart.
Next.
I think this really, the Bridgegate scandal especially really plays into the lack of transparency that we have in the New Jersey government and especially in the gubernatorial office. And I think a way that we can really solve and prevent from having these issues is, like the previous delegate said, and also we should try and make the governor's office more transparent in the fact that, in the way that citizens will really be able to know what's going on and not really have an issue, not really understanding what's going on.
Next.
Obviously, the first step is to address this issue and make sure that it can't happen again, and take steps in that direction. But after that, it's important that we move on and continue to address issues that are currently affecting the state. Because as much damage as that might have caused, it's not causing damage at this point, and issues that are currently causing damage and currently need to be addressed should be addressed.
Next.
The question was talking about what my thoughts on the Bridgegate scandal, right? Bridgegate scandal was, right? I think the biggest thing about corruption is that it's not necessarily a legal issue or a political issue. It's more of a social and a cultural issue. Why would we elect a governor that would do this in the first place? What kind of cultural system do we have in place that would set this up? And in order to solve this, we need to look at it from a cultural standpoint. What can we change about the way that New Jersey's culture actually goes about that we can actually solve this problem? One of the ways is through transparency. There's other ways, including financial incentive to be open.
I'm sorry, delegate, your time's elapsed.
All right, thank you.
Please give it up for the delegates for the third question. fourth question will be directed towards Mr. Polina, and we'll go Woolhouse, Burton, Chow, and Jaramillo. Will the next press delegate please read the question?
Serena Wadzinski, Middlesex delegation. My question is, how do you plan to further integrate specialized committees into the rest of the conference?
Yeah, may I start? So this is a great question because this is actually what most of my platform rests on, right? The idea of unifying conference so that delegates can interact with as many people as possible. So like I talked about during my whistle stop campaigns and my opening, I'm looking to do things like creating a forum for lobbyists and legislators to communicate with one another so that lobbyists are more integrated into the main experience and aren't just running into chamber rooms. I'm looking to open up the cabinet to the rest of the delegates so that, this important and crucial part of conference isn't so separated from everyone else. And, I think that integrating the other specialized committees, like the ERC, which is new this year, maybe eventually having lobbyists and legislators go in there and talk in there would also be a great idea.
Next.
I think we all have similar ideas on this one, but one thing I would like to do is have the lobbyists talk to the delegates before the delegates are able to go to the cabinet members and plead their case on why they think that the cabinet should pass their bill. This will give the lobbyists a chance to kind of give some tips and pointers to delegates. And also I had an idea to have the judicial delegates be able to talk to the legislative delegates about the different types of legal issues that could come along with their bill.
Next.
This is an issue that does need to be addressed as well as we can because integration and unity is a big part of this conference. I would suggest with my idea of intercommittee partnerships that special committees also be involved so that they can receive pre-conference assignment feedback and receive general guidance from other delegates. And I've also heard many great ideas today regarding the integration during conference of others, such as the opening of cabinet and the involvement of the lobby and more things.
Next.
To be honest, I don't think I would do too much to ensure that things are integrated between specialized and legislatures. I think that one of the greatest things about this conference is that the people that we find to talk to are the people that we choose to talk to, not the people that we are pushed into a forum to talk to. Obviously, the chamber, that's an exception, a big exception, but that's because, well, it's the model. I think that... Oh, is my microphone on? No? Okay. I think that the biggest thing that we can do is to encourage more people to talk to each other. Not necessarily between legislature and specialized, but between delegates. It doesn't matter whether or not you're a legislative delegate or a specialized delegate. What matters is that you're a delegate.
Next.
Okay, so being a delegate from specialized committees, I know the wall of separation that kind of exists between the legislative branch and the specialized committees. So what I really want to do is with the ERC for next year, I'd really love that if legislators with relevant bill solutions to possible crisis topics could come in and speak on their bill as potential solutions to the crises. In addition, I really would love to have press delegates be able to sort of make publications on judicial hearings, and then also I would want the lobby to be able to enter cabinet and discuss any bills that they might be assigned that have made it thus far.
Thank you, delegate. Please get up to the candidates for the fourth question. The last question will be directed towards Ms. Woolhouse. Then it will go Burton, Chow, Jaramillo, and Polina. Will the next press delegate please read the final question?
Jasmine Champagne, Monroe Township delegation. How do you suggest that New Jersey better prepare in response to emergencies and crises like Hurricane Sandy and destruction of roads from the recent snow?
Thank you. I really think this goes back to the issue of transparency, and we need to make sure the citizens are informed about what's going on, especially with Sandy and especially with the past winter storms that we've had. We really need to make sure that the citizens are informed in what's happening and what is going to be happening. As far as changing anything, I think that the system that we currently have is effective, and so I just like to continue that system and just make sure that citizens know what's happening. Thank you.
Next.
My concept for the improvement of emergency services would be to create a task force that's intended to address and evaluate our current emergency services plans and emergency plans, and then to, in the event of a disaster and emergency, to regulate contact with emergency services from the state, to regulate contact with power companies and insurance companies, to ensure that the state is doing as much as it possibly can to prepare for and to limit the damage of this crisis.
Next.
fund infrastructure. One of the biggest problems in New Jersey today is that we are not putting enough money, we are not putting enough effort into our infrastructure. One of the greatest things that helps our infrastructure, the Transportation Trust Fund, is underfunded by about 30 to 60 billion, and Chris Christie pulled a lot of really weird budget kind of manipulation to get that balanced. One of the things that we've been seeing is that PSE&G has invested $4 billion over the next 4 years to ensure that the power lines can withstand the snowstorms that come today. And I think that we'll put this into a slogan: New Jersey's people are stronger than the storm, so should our infrastructure.
Next.
Okay, so I feel that the best way to combat a crisis such as Hurricane Sandy is better communication with the people, using mass media, written press, video press, internet to sort of relegate information of where they can get help, what's going to happen next, exactly what the government is doing to help them. And I really think that there should be like designated locations in geographical areas with large amounts of people that people can go to for help in situations such as Superstorm Sandy.
Next.
Oh, well, I think the first step is to make sure that the governor is not holding back relief money from any towns that need it. And beyond that, I think that our basic response to both Sandy and the snowstorms that have recently hit has been rather good. The recovery from Sandy was rather remarkable, to tell the truth. But the one thing that I would say is that in some counties now, during all the snowstorms, they've run out of supplies of salt, and some of their maintenance trucks have begun to malfunction. So I think that just having the preparedness to have the adequate amount of supplies and manpower to handle these disasters, now that we're aware and paying attention to the fact that they can happen in New Jersey, is the most crucial step to being able to respond to them when they do occur.
Thank you, delegates. Please give it up for your candidates.